Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. The 2023 IHSAA Girls Basketball State Tournament has been absolutely insane, and thankfully we've got one more weekend to talk about, as this weekend is the state finals for girls basketball. We're going to dive into the players to watch, the keys to the game, and predictions for all four of Saturday's state championship games. It's going to be a lot of fun to predict it. It hardly seems possible. Gainbridge Fieldhouse is time to get into the first set of state finals. Of course, we'll have the boys in about a month or so, but man, the girls tournament, B. Scott, has been nuts. We talked about it during the preview, how a lot of times, it can be a little bit predictable. The talent gap is a little bit wider when in these types of tournaments. But shockingly enough, we've seen plenty of upsets.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's unreal. I mean, you're gonna go through it of who our picks were going into sectionals, and there's only been one correct.
Right.
Only one. So that just says. I mean, I don't think I could have predicted. I didn't. We did. We didn't predict a lot of these teams making it. I mean, now we were correct, and some of saying, hey, look, a team coming out of this sectional is very likely going to end up playing at Gainbridge. But man, I mean, my high school made a run to the Final Four, that completely unexpectedly. I mean, so I mean, it was definitely an entertaining postseason, and it's going to be fun capping it off this weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean there were some runs, because I mean, now once you get down to the end, I mean, a lot of the teams that we picked did make the semi-state and all that kind of thing, and then of course it was a new format for the semi-state where instead of 2 regional games, there are 2 semi-state games, which I love. And so I mean, once you get down to those, Final 8, Final 4 teams, it's anybody's guess, because you've made the run already so far, and it's just a matter of finishing off that run. So, just absolute craziness. So let's go ahead and get into it here. It's safe to say, like I've said, that this is not how we thought the tournament would go. Looking through our pre-tournament predictions for the 4A state champion, we both picked South Bend, Washington, who was eliminated in semi-state. Now, they did deal with an injury. Elia, trying to think of, I want to say Elia Washington. That's not her last name. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it. But her sister, she and her sister are both going to Maryland. And Elia Reynolds, there we go. She got injured early on in the tournament, so I think it was literally during sectionals, so that obviously did not help. But South Bend Washington, a team that was literally winning games by 40 points in the regular season, we thought was a shoe-in to be at Gainbridge. They lose in the semi-state. In the 3A state championship prediction, I had Jay County. B. Scott had Twin Lakes. Jay County loses in the sectionals. Twin Lakes loses in semi-state. I was pretty big on Jay County, and they did not come through in the end. As far as 2A state champion, I had Central Noble. You had Lafayette Central Catholic. The Cougars actually beat LCC themselves before they themselves were defeated 1 game shy of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then in the 1A state championship, I had Tri, and B. Scott had Lanesville. That's the only team that we picked in the entire show. It came at the very end of the broadcast. But B. Scott had Lanesville.
Nailed it.
B. Scott had Lanesville in the state final. I had Tri losing in semi-state. All 4 matchups are first-time meetings, at least in the last 20 years per John Harrell, so there's not any previous matchups to go through. By the rankings here, this really defines how crazy this state finals weekend is. Lanesville is the only number 1 ranked team to make the state finals. We have one number 2 team, a number 3 team, 1 team ranked number 6, and 3 teams that went into the tournament ranked 7th in their respective polls that end up making it to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then you also have an unranked team that has been a Cinderella story all the way to Indianapolis.
See, that's what Indiana high school basketball is all about right there, that one unranked team.
Right. No 1 versus 2 matchup. So it's literally, we've got, I think it's like a 7 versus a 1, a 6 versus a 7. a 2 versus the unranked team. Like it's pretty insane what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is what Indiana high school basketball is about, whether it be on the men's side or the women's side of things. The fact that we're not having 1 versus 2, and there was an unranked team going that went into the tournament that made it to Gainbridge. That's what it's all about, and you love to see that kind of tournament play out.
Yeah, and it was from a sectional two that wasn't like when I looked at it, I knew that sectional was going to be competitive, but it wasn't a sectional you looked at and said, okay, the team that could potentially win the state tournament is coming from that sectional bracket. It was okay, they might win the sectional, but they're not going to get much further. It's not like a team that we normally are used to seeing get here. They just kind of a down year. Because I mean, I remember like last year, Westfield was unranked going into the state tournament, weren't they? The boys team, because Braden Smith had like missed the whole season because of injury, and then because he came
Yeah,
back, like they made a pretty decent run through the tournament. So it wasn't even like that. It was literally a team coming out of nowhere. So you love to see that. So hey, what are we doing? Still making small talk. Let's get in
let's get to it.
to the state finals. It's all going to tip off on Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time for the 1A state final. The number 7 Bethany Christian Bruins, they're 24-3. They take on the number 1 Lanesville Eagles. They're 27-2. The Bruins rode to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It started in the sectionals. They defeated Fort Wayne Blackhawk 33-32. They defeated Lakewood Park 56-37. In the regional, they defeated Tri-County 38-30. In the semi-state, they defeated number 6 Washington Township 55-50, and they defeated number 2 Tri in the semi-state as well 58-54. The Eagles rode to Gainbridge Fieldhouse in the sectionals. They defeated Rock Creek Academy 58-24. They defeated number 9 Borden in the sectional championship 58-27. They defeated Wood Memorial 64-26. They defeated, and then in the semi-state, they defeated number 4 Trinity Lutheran 56-41 in the morning game, and then defeated number 13 Jackson Dell 45-21 in the nightcap to advance to Gainbridge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give my player to watch and key to the game. B. Scott will give his, and then we'll give our predictions. So my player to watch going into this game, I'm going with Bethany Christian's own Zoe Willems. She's a junior. She's 12th in 1A in scoring with 17 points per game. She's averaging 19 points per game heading into semi-state as far as the tournament's concerned. She's got 429 points on the season, which is nearly 200 more than second on the team. The success has really gone through Willems this season. She's first on the team in rebounds with 205, which is over 100 more than second on the team. She's second on the team in steals, averaging around 4 per game, and leads all Bruins in blocks. If the Bruins have one more upset up their sleeve, Zoe Willems is going to have to play a significant role. And so I think that she's going to be a player that I want to hone in on and watch to see what she does. Because, like I said, if they're going to win, she's going to have a good game. As far as my key to the game for this 1A state final, I think Lanesville needs to get on a first half run. I mean, they have been insane in terms of, they've not always gotten off to the greatest starts, but once they get rolling, that offense really kicks into gear. The Eagles were tied with Rock Creek Academy 11-11 early in the second quarter before going on a 14-0 run to close out the first half, up 25-11. After leading by just a 12-11 score in the sectional title game, the Eagles went on a 17-0 run to pull away from Borden. They led Wood Memorial 17-5 after the first quarter in the regional, and then used a 26-point second quarter to hold a 43-12 lead at halftime. They led Jackson Dell in the semi-state championship 16-2 after the first 29-9 at halftime. During the tournament, Lanesville has beating opponents by an average of 28 points per game. Keeping up the average that had them 5th in the state during the regular season in that category. So if Lanesville can make one of those big runs in the first half, especially on a Bethany Christian team that is 5th defensively in 1A, a top 20 in the state, then the Eagles will be all set. So if they can get that offense going, start creating turnovers, get that big 10 to 15 point run, then they're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, I love your pick there of Zoe Willems. I mean, you look at her averaging 17.1 points per game. That's awesome. But I'm looking at Lanesville, and in particular, I mean, I'm looking at Morgan Sonner. She's 6'1". She's their center. I mean, yeah, she's not their leading scorer on their team by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, she's only averaging a little over 7.5 points a game. But the key is feed her because she's going to have that height advantage. You look at Bethany Christian. Yeah, Bethany Christian. Their tallest player, it comes in at 5'10", which is roughly, if my math is right, 3 inches shorter than Morgan Sonner. I mean, so just keep feeding her. And if they do double down on her, that's also then going to open things up for Lindsay Werner, who is the team's leading scorer at 13.5 points per game. But the thing for me with Morgan Sonner, she is shooting 75% from the free throw line. So that's going to be key. Just keep getting the ball to her, work the inside. That is also my key to the game. Work the inside. Look, both of these teams are two of the better defensive teams in 1A. I mean, we have I'm on the wrong page looking at the stats. Here we go. Here they are again. Lanesville is number 2 in the state in scoring defense, allowing only 28.4 points per game, while Bethany Christian is 17th in the state, allowing only 33.4 points per game. So it's going to be a defensive battle, and you got to be able to find where your advantages lie. And Lanesville definitely has the advantage of size on the inside. If they can feed that, get to the free throw line, I think that's going to be a real help for them.
I absolutely agree. I mean, you mentioned Morgan Sonner. She was a huge contributor in the win over Jacksonville as well. She was the leading scorer in that game. So, yeah, the inside, they got the height advantage. I like where you're going with that. As far as predictions go, I cannot sleep on Lanesville again. I was waffling between picking them in the sectional preview and obviously regret not doing so. They've shown me why I should have picked them. I mean, they're third in 1A in scoring with 56 points per game. They're first in the class defensively, holding teams to 28 points per game. That's good enough for second overall in Indiana. They have 2 players averaging in double figures on the year, Lindsay Werner and senior Lindsay Werner and sophomore Hadley Crozier. Like you mentioned, they have the height with 2 players over 6 foot. Morgan Sonner, like you mentioned. They've got the height. They can score. They've been doubling teams up this season and postseason, no matter how good the opposition has been. So Lanesville, I think they're on track to win their first state championship in program history.
Yeah, I picked Lanesville going into sectionals. I'm sticking with Lanesville. I'm not jumping ship now. Lanesville, like I said, you said it. That height advantage is going to be key. Gets the free throw line. Really kind of got to have that lockdown defense though, because Bethany Christian is better from behind the arc. So you got to lock them down. Got to shut that down. But feed the rock into the center. You'll be good to go. I got Lanesville.
All right, so we're both on Lanesville. We'll see what happens in the 1A state final. Directly after that, it's going to be the 2A state final. That's at 12:45 Eastern Time on Saturday. This is our unranked matchup. Lapel, the Bulldogs, 22-7. They go up against number 2 Forest Park, the Rangers, 25-3. The Bulldogs' road to Cambridge Fieldhouse looked like this. In the sectionals, they defeated Wapahani 49-43. In the sectional semifinal, they defeated Alexandria 58-56, and they defeated Winchester in the sectional championship game 52-47. In the regional, they defeated number 12 Eastbrook 39-37, and then in the semi-state, they defeated number 4 Andrean 44-32, and defeated number 3 Central Noble 51-38 to punch their ticket to Cambridge Fieldhouse. As far as the Rangers go, their road to the state finals saw them in the sectional defeat North Posey 41-25, Tell City 52-20, and South Spencer 47-23. In the regional, they defeated number 13 Brownstown Central 45-38, and in the semi-state, they defeated Greencastle 65-48 before knocking off the number 1 team in 2A, North Knox 41-36. So looking at players to watch. So I was looking through the rosters. Now, Forest Park did not upload their stats to MaxPreps. I know now that the programs are out. I know you have them in front of me, so I'm interested to see if you've got anybody from Forest Park that can top it, or maybe you've got somebody from Lapel. But I've got a freshman here. So not only do you have a team that was unranked make it all the way to the state final, they're being led by a freshman. Lanaya
that
Wills.
bodes well for your future.
Yes.
Very well.
Well, and like not only that, but I'm pretty sure their second leading scorer is like also an underclassman. Like they're not going to be gone next year. So Lapel is going to be a team to watch. No matter what happens this Saturday, they're going to be a team to watch in 2023, 2024. But Lanaya Wills, the freshman, she's top 25 in 2A in scoring with 16 points per game, first for the Bulldogs in that category. She leads all Bulldogs in rebounding by nearly 278 boards. The next closest has 84. She's tied for the team lead in steals, the team leader in blocks as well. I mean, to be a difference maker already as just a freshman, I'm excited to see what she does on the big stage at Cambridge. The key to the game for me is the Rangers' defense. Forest Park boasts the fifth best defense statistically in the state, second in 2A, allowing 31 points per game. In the Rangers game versus Greencastle, that was their only game this tournament versus a top 50 offense in the state. Greencastle was 24th in scoring, third in 2A, averaging 59 points per game, and the Rangers held them to just 48. But conversely, Lapel has faced several fantastic defenses along their way to Cambridge Fieldhouse. They faced Eastbrook in the regional. Eastbrook averaged allowing 30 points per game, which was first in 2A, third in the state. The Dogs scored 39 points. In the game against Central Noble was fifth in 2A, 14th in Indiana, allowing 33 points per game. The Bulldogs scored 51 in that 2A state semifinal. Against Alexandria, who allows 34 points per game. That's 9th in 2A, 22nd in the state. Lapel scored 58 points. That was in the sectional semis. Wapahani, they average allowing 37 points allowed per game. That's 15th in 2A, 48th in the state. Lapel scored 49 points in that sectional opener. So they went up against some of the best defenses in the state, and not only like, okay, cool, they allowed, Central Noble allows 39 points and Lapel scored 41. Like, no, they saw that bar and they even exceeded that bar. So if Forest Park wants to win, they're going to have to play like one of the best defenses in the state. Actually say, no, we're number 2 in the state. We're number 1 in 2A. We are going to lock you down and play good defense, because the other good defenses Lapel has faced haven't been able to contain the Bulldogs. So I think Forest Park's defense is going to be key.
Yeah, this one's going to be fun. It's the David versus Goliath kind of battle that we come to expect, like especially in like sectionals and everything. But for me, the player I'm watching is actually from Forest Park. I am watching senior forward, 6'1" senior forward, Amber Treader. Amber is actually averaging close to a double-double. I mean, she's kind of the do-it-all for this team. She's averaging almost 16 points per game, almost 9 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists per game, shooting over 70% from the free throw line. Oh, and she's also shooting nearly 42% from the three-point range. So you got to worry about her on the inside. You got to worry about her on the outside. She's getting the rebounds for her team. She's kind of the do-it-all. So that is Amber Treader is definitely my player to watch. My biggest key to this game, Forest Park, if you want to win this game, look, you got to realize that Lapel's going to come in and they are going to play like really hungry. They're going to play with nothing to lose because they shouldn't be here. Numbers don't lie. Unranked, it shouldn't be Lapel, but that's just the way sometimes tournaments run the course. So Forest Park, what they need to do is they need to lock them down and get out to a quick and early lead. If they can get out to an early lead over Lapel, that may take the wind out of the sails from Lapel, and then that allows Forest Park to settle into their game plan. If they can get to the point where they can settle into their game plan, get into that lockdown defense, feed the ball to Amber Treader, whether she's hitting it from inside or outside, really you got to take the wind out of the sails of Lapel early, so that way they don't feel like they have the chance in it. I mean, it's a great story and everything, but sometimes the clock has to strike midnight, and this unfortunately might be the time for Lapel.
I am glad you made that analogy of the clock striking midnight, because as we get into our prediction, my prediction is that the clock will not strike midnight on the lapel Bulldogs.
Look at
Give me
you.
that squad. They've got
There
a
you
few
go.
secondary options behind Wills. They've got Madeline Pointer, who averages 12 points per game. Deania Haseman, averaging 9 points per game. They're battle tested. 3 straight games versus ranked teams, including 2 of the top 4 teams in 2A in the semi-state round, going through number 4 Andrean, going through number 3 Central Noble, which was my pick to win the state final in 2A. They're the definition of getting hot at the right time. They've played 4 of 6 games this tournament versus top 5 defenses in 2A. Those 4 teams had allowed roughly an average of 35 points per game, and Lapel in those games averaged 49 points per game. They're absolutely clicking right now, and the Lapel Bulldogs win their first state championship in program history.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there is something to say for clicking at the right time, but I'm not ready to say the clock is ticking very slowly. I'm going with Forest Park. I just think the advantage that they have with Amber Treader, her ability to hit the 3-pointer, her advantage on the boards, that's something you can't take lightly. I think honestly, Forest Park comes home with the Class 2A state championship.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well could go that way, but I think it's an exciting story. We'll see what happens. Our first disagreement here in this state finals preview, and we'll see if we have any more as we get on into the 3A and 4A preview. But before we get there, let's go ahead and talk about our friends of the show. First of all, from Anchor. The Crash Course Podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device, and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcasts with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Also, the Crash Course Podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game, heard weekly on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be heard. Board games build bridges. In the nightcap from Gainbridge Fieldhouse, we've got the 3A state final. That's going to tip off at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That sees the number 7 Fairfield Falcons. They're 27-2, taking on the number 6 Corden Central Panthers at 27-2. So 27-2 teams. The Falcons rode a Gainbridge Fieldhouse in the sectionals. They defeated West Noble 55-6. They defeated Lakeland 64-40 to win that sectional. In the regional, they defeated Highland 40-32, and in the semi-state, they defeated Tippecanoe Valley 54-33 before defeating the number 1 team in 3A, Twin Lakes, 42-34. The Panthers rode at Gainbridge Fieldhouse looked like this. They defeated Charlestown in the sectional opener 58-39 before defeating North Harrison 53-39 and Scottsburg 63-54 to take that sectional crown. They defeated Rushville in the regional 68-40, and in the semi-state they defeated Gibson Southern 58-42 before defeating number 5 Indian Creek 48-42. So player to watch. I'm going with Corden Central's own Ava Weber. She's a senior. She's 14th in the state, second in 2A, scoring with 22 points per game. One of just 2 players this weekend who are in the top 50 in the state in terms of points per game. She's got 4 games of 30 points or more. 3 have come in the state tournament. She's got 19 games of 20 or more points, including all 6 tournament games. She's averaged 27 points per game during the state tournament. She also leads the team in rebounds. She's easily the best player on the court this weekend statistically, as far as looking at scoring goes. As far as my key to the game, it's going to be Corden Central's complementary players. Fairfield allows an average of 28 points per game, which is number 1 in the state. They knocked off the number 11 team offensively in the state in Twin Lakes, who averaged 61 points per game, held them to just 34 points, allowed 14 points in the first quarter before allowing only 20 the rest of the way. Twin Lakes had 3 scorers averaging in double figures on the season. Only one, Addie Bausman, scored double digits on Saturday. Bausman scored 16. The rest of the team had 18 points. Leading scorer Olivia Olivia Nickerson had just the team leader in scoring, Olivia Nickerson, had just 9 points. Her average was 18 points going into that game. So I say all that about Fairfield to say that in Corden's win over number 5 Indian Creek, of course, Ava Weber got hers, 22 points in that game, but sophomore Josie Vaughn had 12 points. Vaughn is the second leading scorer for the Panthers. Weber had 8 rebounds. Sophomore Alyssa Grover had 7. Junior Morgan Adams in the early game on Saturday versus Gibson Southern had 10 points and 11 rebounds. So what you saw in that game for Fairfield was them taking away those complementary players, knowing that, hey, there's going to be one of those 3 for Twin Lakes that's going to go off. Let's go ahead and just eliminate those other 2, and that's how they got to this point. And so if you're Corden Central, who has some good complementary pieces of your own, that's going to be your goal, is to make sure that those players, give Abel Weber her the support that she needs to carry this team to the finish line. So I think, we know she's going to be a main contributor, Ava Weber, so it's a matter of getting those around her to step up so they can break through that fantastic defense that Fairfield has.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is probably going to be the best game, the most highly contested game potentially. These two teams are very evenly matched, but for me, the player that I'm watching is Fairfield senior guard Brea Garber. Brea Garber, 6 foot guard. She is the tallest player on her team and plays guard. So that is something that's very interesting. Um, she's averaging almost 15 points per game, nearly 5 rebounds a game, and almost 4 assists per game as well. So she's scoring it, she's rebounding it, and she's dishing it out as well. This Fairfield team, like you said, they did knock off number 1 Twin Lakes in the semi-state final rounds of semi-state. So they have what it takes to knock off the top. When you look at the key for me for this game, let me get back to that page. I have a lot of notes here. The Falcons of Fairfield, they are number 1 in the state and allowing only 28.3 points per game. That's going to be key, because when you look at their kind of statistical rundown here, they are averaging 54.9 points per game, which is less than Corydon. However, they are only allowing, like I said, 28.3 points per game compared to Corydon's 40 points per game. So Fairfield is going to have the defensive advantage, especially when you have a guard, a player that can play the perimeter like Brea Garber. That is always a huge, huge advantage. So my key to the game is just play your style of defense. Put Brea Garber on Corydon's best player, lock her down, take her out of the game altogether, and be able to just play smart basketball, but stick to your style of defense and ride what got you here in the first place.
Yeah, and I like where you're going with that. As far as predictions go, I really want to go Corden Central here, going with Ava Weber, but I'm actually gonna go with Fairfield. What they did to Twin Lakes is just so impressive. Twin Lakes is a far better offense than Corden is, and the Falcons rose to the occasion. On the flip side, Corden has not seen a defense on the same level as Fairfield during the state tournament. The Falcons have allowed more than 35 points just once during the tournament. Corden was averaging 59 points per game this postseason before their game versus number 5 Indian Creek, the 36th best defense in the state, and were held to below 50 points. And obviously, I point that out not to say like, oh, they finally played a good defense and scored just 2 points less than 50 on the year. That first game they scored under 50, in a while. But then again, I mean, Fairfield crushed their game versus superior offense, and those numbers for Corden are underwhelming. So like the one thing you can kind of go on, because both teams kind of, they avoided kind of the big teams of their tournaments that were ahead of them ranking wise before getting to semi-state. So that one kind of test in the semi-state, Fairfield passed with flying colors, not only beating the number 1 team, but absolutely shutting them down. Whereas Corden, sure, they knocked off the number 5 team. That's impressive. That's good. But they didn't do it as impressively as Fairfield did. And that's what I think has me going with Fairfield. I think Fairfield comes in with more momentum. Their defense is way better. I think Fairfield wins this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Fairfield. I mean, when you have a guard that's 6 foot in women's basketball and that's your tallest player on the team, and that defense alone. I mean, the point differential is like 26.6 per game for Fairfield. That's going to be tough for Corridon to overcome. So give me Fairfield.
All right, one more game to get to. We've been in agreement on 2. We've disagreed on the other one, the 2A. Let's see if we disagree on 4A. That game gets underway at approximately 8:15 Eastern Time, the final game of the 2022-2023 girls basketball season. That sees the number 3 Fishers Tigers. They're 26-2, going against the number 7 Bedford North Lawrence Stars. They're 26-3. The Tigers rode to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Looked like this. They defeated Carmel in the sectional. They were in that really tough sectional where that were like 4 of the top 5 teams were in that sectional. They defeated Carmel 63-43. They defeated number 2 Noblesville 67-64 in 2 overtimes before then facing Hamilton Southeastern 58-44. Hamilton Southeastern was the number 4 team in 4A. In the regional, they defeated number 12 Homestead 61-31, and in the semi-state, in the opener, they defeated number 10 Fort Wayne Schneider 67-66, and then in the nightcap, they defeated number 11 Lake Central 41-24. As far as the Stars, their road to Gainbridge Fieldhouse in the sectional, they defeated Jennings County 51-38. They defeated Jeffersonville 65-50, and they defeated Silver Creek 62-25. In the regional, they defeated Evansville Central 67-48, and then in the semi-state, in the opener, they defeated number 9 Center Grove 50-43, and in the semi-state final, they defeated Lawrence North 47-40. Sad violin for B. Scott there.
Hey, no, I mean, the fact they made it to the Final Four unexpectedly, I'll take it. I mean, Lawrence North's a basketball school, so anytime you can get that close on a year you weren't supposed to.
Very true, very true.
It's great.
So my player to watch is Bedford North Lawrence's Chloe Spreen. She's a junior. I mentioned that there were just 2 scorers in the top 50 in Indiana playing this weekend. Spreen is the other one, aside from Ava Weber. She's 43rd in the state, 14th in 4A, averaging 19 points per game. She had 26 points, 5 rebounds in the win over Lawrence North in the state semifinal. She had 20 points, 5 rebounds in the early game on Saturday versus Center Grove, so she absolutely balled out when they needed to, in the semi-state. She's second on the team in rebounds, leads the team in blocks. She's the best player on the court in terms of shooting statistically, and if Bedford hopes to win, it will run through her. My key to the game, this was really tough because these 2 teams are so even statistically. Like, it literally hurt my brain. I couldn't I was trying to think of a key to the game because, a lot of these games you could be like, oh, well, whichever defense steps up, and that was the case, especially like in the Fairfield game and the Forest Park game. So I was trying to not repeat myself a whole lot. Both these offenses are pretty highly rated in the state of Indiana. They're still close statistically. It was, like I said, it was literally hurting my brain, but this is what I came up with. During this tournament, Fishers has faced Noblesville, Hamilton Southeastern, Homestead, and Fort Wayne Snyder. Those teams make up the 6th, 10th, 21st, and 31st best offenses in the state, all averaging 58 points per game or more. Those teams are also 4th, 7th, 11th, and 14th in 4A. This postseason, Bedford North Lawrence has faced Jennings County, Jeffersonville, and Lawrence North. Those teams make up the 9th, 36th, 43rd best offenses in the state, all averaging 56 points per game or more. The 6th, 17th, and 21st offenses in 4A. Between those 2 teams, Fishers and Bedford North Lawrence, they've eliminated and outscored 7 of the state's top 50 offenses, including 4 in the top 25. So they've gone out and shown that they can compete with the best. I mean, first of all, they are 2 of the best offenses, but they've also gone up against offenses better than they were and outscored them and outplayed them and played with the best offenses. They've shown they can beat anybody this season when they've gone up against them. And so when you have 2 offenses that are this good, it's going to be the little things. Who can make their, free throws? Who can turn the ball over less? Who can grab more offensive boards, giving your team a second chance? Who can grab more defensive boards and give your team, eliminate second chances for the other team? So whoever does the little things the best is going to be the team that wins the game on Saturday. Whoever can, limit mistakes, do the small things. I know it kind of sounds cliche, but again, these 2 teams, in any statistical category, any of the major statistical categories, they're not separated by more than 2 or 3. I know Bedford North Lawrence averages 61 points per game. Fishers averages 59. Fisher's average is 28 rebounds per game. Bedford North Lawrence averages 26. So it's so close in all these categories, and I was trying to think, like, literally, I looked at the quarters. I was like, okay, so does like either of these teams like have these amazing numbers in like one quarter where like if Fishers can like weather the storm, like what happens? Like no, it was like both teams average like 13 points in the first quarter. Bedford averages 15 in the second. Fishers averages 13 in the second. Like they both pretty much average 13 points every quarter. So it was pretty nuts. These teams are so even. So it'll be whoever does those small things well who will end up hoisting the trophy on Saturday night.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I mean, Bedford North Lawrence is a team that we've heard a lot about. We talked a lot about them at our sectional preview. But for me, the player I'm watching the most is Fisher's senior guard, Haley Smith. She's a 5'10" guard, right now averaging 12 points a game, nearly 7 rebounds a game, and a little over 2.5 assists per game as well. She's shooting over about 52% from the field, at 36% from 3-point, and 74% from the charity stripe. Again, it comes down to big guard play, and that to me that just it's a huge advantage when you have guards that stack up at that size. And really across the board, Fishers is the taller, the bigger team. I mean, it's going to be interesting between really it is going to be interesting between Haley Smith and Chloe Spring, because they match up so well against each other size wise, and they're going to be the two teams' go-to players. So for me, it's the key to this game is it's going to be the experience. We know Bedford North Lawrence has the experience throughout the entire season. They've put together a solid resume, being that's why they're one of the better ranked teams in the state. But then you got to look at the postseason run that Fishers has put together, especially coming out of that sectional. And this was the sectional that we talked about, saying that, hey, anybody coming out of this sectional has a legitimate shot of making it to Gamebridge. And sure enough, a team coming out of the Noblesville sectional made it. Having to go through number 2 Noblesville and Hamilton Southeastern, that is not an easy task, especially Hamilton Southeastern, who knows how to get the job done in the postseason. So I kind of give Fishers a little bit of an edge there. But really, it's who can get off to a hot start, who can put the jitters of being able to play in a state championship game behind them, and just really kind of get down to business. That's going to be my biggest key to the game. Who can start off the hottest?
Yeah, that sectional, you mentioned it. Not only you have Hamilton Southeastern, you have the defending 4A state champion Noblesville. I know their best player from last year is not there anymore. But still, like, you have the defending champs there. They were still number 2.
Zionsville was in that. Zionsville was in that.
Zionsville has a player
well.
going to North Carolina. That's like one of the reasons why I picked them, because you have a player with that much notoriety, that much a player going to that notorious of a school. You're like, okay, well, she's the best player on the court. Obviously, they're going to take care of business. And Fishers didn't have to play them, so I'm not trying to sit here saying, and I'm not sitting here trying to say like if they would have played, they would have won, because obviously Zionsville didn't make it past who they played. But still, I mean, to get out of that sectional is absolutely incredible. As we get to the prediction, it's hard to ignore what Bedford North Lawrence has going for them. They're better statistically on offense and defense. The Stars have the 8th best offense, averaging 62 points per game. Fishers is 22nd, averaging 59 points per game. Bedford North Lawrence allows 38 points per game. Fishers allows 45 points per game. Along with Chloe Spring, the Stars have 2 other players who score in double figures. Carson Norman, 16 points per game. Mallory Pride, 11 points per game. Fishers has 2 scorers averaging in double figures. You mentioned Haley Smith, 12 points per game. Olivia Smith, who averages 11 points per game. But we've mentioned it. We've beat that drum pretty hard. What's harder to ignore is what Fishers has done in this state tournament, knocking off 5 straight ranked opponents, including 2 of their fellow top 5 teams in the sectional, defeating those teams by an average of 14 points per game. I mean, Sure, they've had their close calls against Fort Wayne Snyder and against Noblesville. Obviously, those happened, but those other games they took care of business. It's not like they've scraped by 3 points, 2 points, all sectional. They've gone out and they've won close games. They've also gone out there and beat the brakes off of people. So Fishers is by far the most battle tested. They're the third ranked team at the state's highest class, and they bring home their first state title in program history. Just absolutely so hard to ignore what Fishers has done, and I think that they finish off that goal. It reminds me a lot of my Super Bowl prediction where I was like, both these teams are so good and so deserving, and the Eagles, Bedford North Lawrence in this case, like they maybe have the most talent going for them, but you have the Chiefs who are more battle tested. So who do you go with? It's so close. So I'm going with Fishers. I think they get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I think the postseason gauntlet, it's really hard to get through, no matter where you're coming from. But if you are more battle tested and have gotten to this point by having to go through some stronger competition, then it's hard to really look away from Fishers. I mean, I think if Bedford North Lawrence had really kind of put together Lawrence North away a little bit more by a little bit more, and it wasn't such close of a margin, I may be leaning more towards Bedford North Lawrence here, but they're not exactly lighting the world on fire for me right now. And I think the hot hand, I mean, I know I didn't go with Lapel earlier, who's got it turned on right at the right time, but I think this time around it's not the underdog. Fishers really isn't the underdog in this. And I don't think they're going to play that way. They're not going to be intimidated by the big stage. They're not going to be intimidated by the team sitting on the other side of the court from them. So I'm going Fishers as well. I think they bring home the state championship in 4A.
Well, there you have it. We both have Lanesville in the 1A. I have Lapel. You have Forest Park in the 2A. We both have Fairfield in the 3A, and we both have Fishers in the 4A. It's going to be an absolutely exciting weekend of basketball. So make sure you guys are locked in to that over on 3C Media. We're going to be watching the game, tweeting things out. No live stream, but we're going to be on Twitter interacting with you guys. So make sure you're locked in. That Twitter account is at 3C Media Sports. Make sure you follow 3C Media on Facebook as well. Go drop us a like there. Go to the YouTube channel, the TikTok page, 3C Media over there. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. We've had some good standalone content with the Daytona 500 preview and the Super Bowl preview, so make sure you guys are locked into that. And then remember, every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Next week, we'll be basically hitting the reset button. We'll have the boys sectional that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a lot of fun to get into that, but until then, have a good one, everybody.